Hey, welcome everybody to IMMOOC Season 3, Episode 2. We are lucky to have Alice Keeler join us today, which is awesome because a lot of the conversations we actually had with Joe Bowler last week, Alice is going to hammer them home. And so we're pretty pumped up. She does amazing work. I've seen her speak several times and just blown away by how she pushes thinking. And so that's really one of the reasons we wanted to have her, is because if you are comfortable, be prepared to be challenged. So she's always pushing me to be better, and just love her work. And hopefully we get to talk about her love for spreadsheets, which I find is one of the most fascinating things. She can see getting excited already. As always, we have Katie Martin joining us. And make sure you send Katie Martin some love. She is having an awesome day, but we just want to make it more awesome. So thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Katie, and Katie and Alice are going to have most of the conversation tonight. I'm going to keep an eye on your questions, your tweets, so that you can make sure that you engage if you are watching this live. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. All right, welcome everybody. We are so excited to be here tonight. Again, looking forward to a great conversation with Alice. And always looking forward to the community and hearing your thoughts. This week has been great. We loved all the blogs. We loved reading your thoughts. There's so many new bloggers this week and so many people stepping out of their comfort zones. So we're going to have some great conversations, and Alice is going to kick us off. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work, and what inspires you to do what you do?
All right. Hey, thanks for having me, George. Thanks for those nice words. So I taught high school math for 14 years, which honestly was the last thing I want to do, is to teach or do math. And, you know, the Lord just has a twisted sense of humor. And so I'm not really sure how I ended up here today, but what I do is I blog a lot and I tweet a lot. I really like working with teachers. And so I teach at California State University, Fresno, in the teacher credential program. And then I travel around just working with teachers on how to integrate technology. And that doesn't mean being paperless. I love paper. And today I made a spreadsheet that is intended to be printed on paper for math. Someone shared something. I'm like, this could be a spreadsheet. But it is a paper activity. So I'm really about student engagement. And I have 5 kids. They are 13, 12, 10, 7, and 5.
Alice doesn't mess around. She does everything. Whether it's having family. It's awesome. So Katie, sorry.
That's one of the reasons I'm really excited to chat with you tonight, Alice, not only as an educator, but as a mom who has kids going through school and really is seeing this from a lot of different angles. You recently wrote a book, Dipset Homework, with Matt Miller. There it is. So tell us a little bit about the book and kind of the premise of this and how you hope to push thinking with this text.
Absolutely. Now, first, it is a thing to rub a DBC book on your face, and we do have a hashtag for that, the Book Face Club. So, George, I hope that you're in on that. I know that your book would qualify, so you can join us. So, you know, Matt's awesome to work with, by the way. He just has a way of making words flow like magic. I just like am in complete awe of his writing style. So if you just want a really good sample of writing, check out how Matt wrote Dipset Homework. So a lot of it was us brainstorming together, but Matt did the majority of the writing because he's really good at it. And I'm a math teacher, and that's not a good excuse because I do like to listen to Grammar Girl. Okay, so Dipset Homework is really a book about teaching. And when you have really, change your teaching practices, when you leverage things like technology in particular, that we can really reduce our need to have homework. And so step number 1, what is the easiest way to reduce or eliminate homework? Stop calling it homework. It's not the homework that's essential. It's independent practice. So if we just change the vocabulary, let's just start calling it independent practice and think about why are we having students practice and when. Where is not magical. In fact, the where can be contentious. It's not equitable. Going into different families and homes, you never know. Even a family that's normally a good place to do homework, in any particular day, there could be stress or something going on that you just never know what's going on inside somebody's house that could make it difficult for them to do work.
That was something, Alice, that Joe mentioned last week, that homework is very inequitable. And so, you know, some of the teachers, some people listening are saying like, well, what does it look like? What should we be doing instead? What recommendations do you have? Especially in like high school.
And I taught high school math and no homework. And as Joe Bowler, this is honestly, it's like a drinking game every time I mention Joe Bowler's name. So I have some water or I have tea in my Dipset textbook mug.
Branding, it's important.
It is important. I happened to pick this one up today. I'm like, this is lucky. But Joe Bowler says in her book that, you know, homework isn't necessary for math. And when you read the research, it says in elementary school, homework really is not that important, doesn't add that much value. In fact, John Hattie's work says none, 0. There's a 0 effectiveness rating for homework. And then you start to see a little bit into middle school and into high school. And then in math in particular, and I've read many research articles, the best that I could really find was that in particular in math was a 2% gain. And so the bang for your buck of when you have students do homework is so low. And part of the reason is just cognitive load. Students are learning all day and then their brains are full. They need to rest their brain. They need to play. There's some great research to show the benefits of play and having kids go outside and do creative things and move. They should move. They shouldn't sit in a chair filling stuff out. That those have more benefits than doing the homework. So what does it look like in the classroom? I stopped giving homework for high school math, and what happened? Nothing, as should be expected. If the effectiveness is at best 2%, you would expect to see really, it shouldn't go up and it shouldn't go down. It should be pretty much the same, which was about what I experienced, except what I get is better relationships with kids. And you know, when you look at John Hattie's work, where he did this meta study of studies and what is effective for learning, and relationships with the teacher is just consistently very high and important. And so what did I usually start my day with? The very first thing I would start my day with teaching math was hassling kids for not having their homework. You know, it's like, this isn't good for learning. And I would spend 15 minutes going over the homework. Waste of time, because when the kid thinks they're done with something, it's like they're coated in Teflon, and anything like say after that, like it slides off of them. Like, why are we talking about this? Because we're done with this. Shouldn't we move on? And so we come in like they've slept on it, or they finish copying it in the hall, which we know happens a lot. So you know, we come in, we go over homework. And that's a chunk of time that we could spend having kids actively learning. So if you take all the minutes and all the effort you put into going over the homework, assigning homework, hassling kids about homework, calling parents about homework, take all that time and ditch it. Then how much time do we have to have kids spend actively learning? So let's talk about the number of minutes a kid should be doing homework. First of all, that is a myth. It's 10 minutes per grade level. Is a recommendation. It is not based on a lick of research. It was just saying like, you know, some kids are just getting too much, so let's put in some guidelines of 10 minutes per grade level. Some dude made that up. That doesn't mean you should have 10 minutes per grade level, but let's go with that, okay? So high school, 12th graders, 12 times 10 is 120. They have 6 classes, so divide that by 6. 120 divided by 6 is 20 minutes. So a senior should be doing 20 minutes per teacher. So the question I have is, can you buy 20 minutes back in your class? How can we make our class run more efficiently so that we're building relationships and giving kids feedback, which those have high effectiveness ratings for learning. Homework is very low. So when you look at the list from John Hattie's research, high at the top of the list, feedback that's actionable, relationships with the teacher, mastery learning, cooperative tasks, all of these things are very high. Very low in the 0.2 range is homework in PowerPoint. You know, average teacher effectiveness rating is 0.4. So when you look at and you just go look at research and just look at the list of what affects learning, since homework is so low, why don't we swap out homework for something that has a higher effectiveness rating? So I really feel like I get a lot of bang for my buck focusing on high quality feedback. I try to stop assigning myself paperwork, grading, and that whole list that John Hattie has Nowhere on there did it say grading improves learning. And so I'm like, great, I'm going to give that up. So I try to spend less of my time managing paperwork, that's lesson plan design. So I design for more cooperative tasks, more things that we do in class. Feedback now is always better than feedback later. So and just think to myself, when I design an assignment, how can I do feedback now, quick? How fast is the feedback? If the answer is slow, which homework by nature is going to be slow, the best you could do is go over it the next day.
So Alice, I think that there's a lot of great points that you made about good things in the classroom and really prioritizing. I love that. Making sure that there's room for doing what matters during the day instead of meaningless tasks. So two things I'm kind of wondering about. I think there's a lot of conversations that need to happen between parents, at school and educators. We have a lot of assumptions about what qualifies as a rigorous classroom. And I think sometimes we're assigning homework and doing these things because we think we're supposed to. Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering on two fronts and choose, like when you're working with your new teachers, how do you kind of help them think differently about their designing their classrooms? And then the second is, how do you help as parents, like how do you work with your school and think about that and different parents to help them understand that homework isn't important?
Let me flip those two around if I can answer the second one first.
Perfect.
If you're ever going to do anything different, which I constantly am doing, like, well, did 100% of my students learn math and they love it? No? Iterate, right? And so after reading a lot of research around grades and grading practices, I just can't find any that support traditional grading practices. So I experiment a lot with doing a little more gamification and less on traditional grades. And what I've really learned is you don't want to step in the hornet's nest. Have you ever talked to somebody who's upset and you're like, oh, just calm down? That doesn't work. Like they want to be mad. So the trick is don't let them get mad. Don't let them show up at your doorstep with pitchforks. So before you do something that is non-traditional, because we're creatures of habit and parents want to support their kids. And when it doesn't go the way that they're used to, they get frustrated. And then when parents are frustrated, and this happens with homework, so not just ditching homework or other things, then they start saying things like, well, this is stupid and your class is stupid, and they're not intentionally, but they're frustrated. So you don't want to let parents get frustrated. You want to be proactive. So before you start saying we're doing no homework, don't just put it in your syllabus and send it in a newsletter home. Call them. Call every single parent. I had 150 students and I did this. I just made it a priority. Calling parents is not a waste of time. It's building those relationships with parents and doing that up front. So spending the first week of school, I can just intentionally design where I have to collect fewer things so that I can swap that time out for talking to parents and to call them. Because I'm just going to, bang for my buck. I only have so many hours of my time. What's going to give me the best use of my time? And so a really good use of my time is making connections with parents. So what I do is I take the first week and a half, kind of back off on assignments that I need to collect and go over and make that phone call. And, it is just not a hard sell to remind them, like, a lot of the times it's not at your kid's level. It's too hard or it's too easy. Have you ever, had your kid rolling on the floor? This is not how the teacher does it. I'm a math teacher. My son comes and asks me, third grade, can you help me with the associative and the commutative property? Well, I can, but what about the other 29 third grade parents? How many of them are sitting here thinking, I feel dumb, I can't do third grade math, but then it ends up with my son rolling on the floor screaming at me. That's not a good idea. So, remind parents, how many times have you just been fighting with your kid? How many times have you not been able to have family dinner time? How many times have you wanted to take your kid to a movie or you wanted to go out in the park and the answer is, but I have homework?
I love that. Building relationships. We talk about building relationships a lot, and that's a really important part of the Innovators mindset. But I think that building relationships with the families and the community is so important as well, because that helps everyone be on the same page. So I just really appreciate you bringing that up.
So when we were doing the research on the book, we sent out a survey to parents, and overwhelmingly, homework sucks and they hate it. And there's a small majority like, I love homework, 10 out of 10. That they only have one child, by the way. I did made a pivot table. I have 5. Think about trying to help 5 kids with homework. It's awesome. Not.
I can't imagine 5 kids at all. Let's just put that out there.
So what we found is that they like is that it's how they know what's going on at school. We can do a better job of communicating. So what I've started advocating is instead of sending materials home where the student is the audience and we ask the parent to interpret it, like, okay, this was written for the child. I have to figure out what this was, try and get my kid to explain it. I don't know what it is, and I have to contact the teacher. Like, what is this thing? Instead to think of intentionally addressing the parents as the parent is the audience. So, you know, I've got a couple of books on Google Classroom. So, shameless self-promotion. So in Google Classroom, when you create an assignment, and this is obviously universal to any tool that you would use, where do you share what's going on with your class? It's 2017. You should be sharing that digitally somewhere. So in Google Classroom, when you write the description, I have an example, like say you have little kids and they're growing beans in a styrofoam cup, right? So you might just put it into Classroom, go check your bean. Okay, well now take that from a parent perspective. What does that mean? Go check your bean. The kids know they're there every day. You're there, you're pointing at it, you've been having conversations, it's ongoing, but just think about a parent that looks at it with no outside understanding of what's going on. Go check your bean. So putting in a parent corner, that in the description of assignments, I type parent corner and then specifically addressing to the parent what we're trying to learn and what we're doing, we're the parents, the audience. We're studying plant growth, and then we're using measurements for math. And so the students having a styrofoam cup by the window, they're growing a bean, and they're gonna go check it. So just taking that time to just type up a description for the parents, the audience, I bet you that would stop at least one parent from sending you an email. So it is a swap of time. It's not extra time to do that, but taking the time to figure out how to better communicate with parents can alleviate a lot of that homework stress as well. So what do I do with my students at Fresno State? I try to convince them to make engaging lesson plans. I think that would be the theme of my class is, that's boring, try again.
And you probably say it just like that.
I think,
well, my class is online right now, so I'm just like, that's boring.
I think you're going to see 5 kids trending on Twitter because about 90 people on IMMOOC actually tweeted that you have 5 kids already. I think that's kind of freaking out that how much you get done with such a large family. So it's absolutely amazing. When you were talking, I was thinking about, I was in Starbucks the other day and I was catching up on something and I saw probably like a 5-year-old with their mom and a 7-year-old, and they were just like hammering through homework, you know, right after school. I was thinking, like, God, like, it's just crazy to me. And that's kind of, you know, the culture. And I don't, like, the thing is, I don't know if that was actually, it just seemed like that was more about the parent than the child, right? Like, or about the school. Like, I don't even know if the school was actually doing that as well. And that night I actually had a conversation with a dad. We were talking about like social media and, you know, the opportunities that exist for kids. And then he brought up the balance argument, which I hear over and over again. And I said, well, what do you do? He said, I'm a physician. I said, do you believe you're balanced? He's like, no. And I said, why would you push that on your kid? I said, like, there's never, because he was like, well, she needs to read books and she needs to read books. And I'm like, did you read books as a kid? And he's like, no. I said, well, you've done pretty well for yourself. Like the notion of like, a lot of times what we do, like, I actually know that I hated reading books for most of my adult life because I was continuously forced to read books I didn't want to read, and it just sucked it out of me. And so I just love your thoughts on those stories I just shared.
Absolutely. Reading is probably the most powerful thing that we can ask kids to do. And I cannot even remotely remember where I read this. So I don't know if it was a research study or just some lunatic ranting on the internet. So but I'm just going to say this. One of the best things that will help your kid to just be a successful human being is for you to read to your kid a lot. And so, you know, not just little kids. I remember when I was in high school, my mom would read us like Chronicles of Narnia. Like my brother and sister and I have one of each, so I'm one of three. I don't know why I have five, because they're awesome. That's why I have five. But so the three of us would sit with my mom, and she would read to us even when I was in high school. And so, you know, when we talk about homework, give the parents homework. Have the parents read to their kid. There's just not, that's just so valuable. It just helps them in life in general. Reading is probably the only thing that you can really find strong support for in terms of homework. But when you force kids to do it, when you have to log it, when you have to log anything, then you hate it. It becomes a chore. It's a drudgery. So my Fresno State students, I would get them these are pre-service teachers, so they've just graduated from college or about to. So at the end of the semester, I'd get them in a circle, and I would just say, tell me just something that comes to your mind, K-12. Something, just what are things that you think about? And we would just go around the circle and share what our memories were. And and usually it's positive things, right? They're like, my English teacher had us sing rap songs for Shakespeare, things like that. And then one student brings up accelerated reader, AR, and how it just stopped his love of reading, and that he was forced to read books he didn't want to read. He had books that he wanted to read, but he was told they were below his reading level, so he was told he couldn't read them. The associations we give kids with learning impacts them their whole life. So we punish kids with running, then they hate to run.
Well, I just want to jump in on that too, because I, much like George, felt the same way. I hated reading, and I'm sure I probably never read a book through high school or college because everyone told me what to read, and so I didn't want to do it. But I would agree with you, and I love to read with my kids. My kids like to read also, but it's the choice. The second we start mandating it, so we can take any good research article, we can take any great practice, but the second we start mandating it and telling people how to do it, you take the enjoyment right out of it and the value, I think. So yeah, so just making sure, I love that choice, giving them opportunities. And I really feel too, like it's the relationships that you're building through reading and through engaging in those activities.
So reading is a really great way to connect with kids and build relationships, just like you said. So instead of the reading logs, ask kids what they're reading and be truly interested in it. You know, you want kids to read, you read. Show them your reading. Talk about what you're reading. And then, what are you reading at home? And engage them that, you know, you're excited about reading and you're excited about what they're reading. You're going to get a lot more bang for that because it's the long-term longevity of loving to read. And so sometimes we get short-term gains, sacrifice the long-term gain for the short-term gain. So like, yep, I got the kid to read today, but they never want to read again.
So that brings up a great point. One of the big points that is in the Innovators mindset is if students leave school less curious than when they started, we have failed them. What are your thoughts about this? And just, it is a great line. I was thinking too.
I think it's a good line. I think it's a pretty good line.
I make stickers. Like I make stickers for everything. I have a sticker for my the answer is always a spreadsheet, and then I have a new one that says, I don't think I have any near me, but 3 dots and a tiny triangle make me excited.
Go ahead, Katie.
Well, I'm like, okay. I was trying to figure it out. The 3 dots and a tiny.
Oh, okay. In Google, like they hide everything. So if you see, there's like tiny triangles everywhere. So when you make a new assignment in Google Classroom, look for it, count it. There are 6 tiny triangles. Don't wonder. Click on it. You know, and it's like there's 3 dots. It means more options. 3 little dots. Like click on them. Like, Alice, how do I edit it? It's the 3 dots. So
I learned something new. Thank you.
I made it into a sticker. So George, you know, I need this as a sticker. I'm just kidding.
So
sticker mule.
After we make it into a sticker, how would you suggest that we stoke curiosity in students? How do you suggest that teachers do that in the classroom?
After a sticker. After
they have the sticker.
Make your lesson plans according to the 5 E's. So this is kind of a more modern lesson plan template. You can just Google it, 5 E's. And the 5 E's are engage, explore, explain, extend, and then evaluate. So we tend to start a lesson by doing the thinking for the students. Hey guys, here's what you need to know. I'm going to wait for you to copy that down. And then you can do some practice with the problems I just showed you as a math teacher. So instead, what we want to do is we want to engage students in their learning, help them to be curious, that they want to come to class. I like Dave Burgess and Teach Like a Pirate, is if students had the option to come into the lesson, would you be teaching to an empty room? So this is one of the things that when I'm helping my students write essential questions for their lesson plans, I just ask them, if you posted the essential question outside of your door and students didn't have to come, would they? I want to learn that. Are they curious? I want to know the answer to that. I love Robert Kaplinski. He is an expert in DOK, specifically for math, depth of knowledge, critical thinking. And if you go to his website, robertkaplinski.com, he's got lessons up at the top for all grade levels. And so one of his essential questions is, how do we save Nellie, the rap star? Do you have any idea what math lesson that is?
Nope.
That's the point, right? It's like, you want to ask kids a question, I want to know that. And oh, by the way, you need some math, so let me show that to you. You know, so how do I help kids to be curious? As I start my lesson by engaging them in something that they care about and that is relevant. I like to try and follow Twitter handles, some of them that will tweet out pictures, history pictures, or statistics and data, and because those are great things to spark conversations and curiosity. And so then it should be explore. What can kids figure out without you? Drop the ego. The answer is a lot. And so let them explore, inquiry. What do they discover in Joe Bowler's book? Yeah, take a drink.
Drink.
So there's an example of a calculus teacher that she starts her lesson by bringing in lemons. And she asks the students to find the volume of the lemons. And so they're working in small groups, and some of them are dunking the lemons, displacement. Some of them are cutting them up and trying to figure out the volume by cutting them up. And so then the small groups share out, because we want to value different approaches. And we want to value students' thinking. It's so much more engaging to do your own thinking rather than to learn what somebody else wants you to know. So start with students thinking, sharing that. And she's like, guys, that's all really awesome. But you know, we have this thing called the integral, which finds the area under the curve. Now, if she had started that lesson with, guys, we're going to find the area under the curve of a graph. Every single kid in the room's thinking, who cares? But when you explain third, when you engage, explore, and then explain comes third. Then kids are like, I need to know that. Can you teach me that? Because I need to know that. Because this was a pain in the butt to stick these lemons and whatever. I need the integral, right? I want kids to want to know how to learn. And then when I let kids explore first and I see what can they do without me, which again is a lot, then I can be more focused in what I'm explaining, right? What do they know and what do I need to fill in rather than just assuming they know nothing and tell them everything. And so when you do a lesson like that, the students spend more time actively engaged and actively learning. So there was an article from Harvard, the math department, and it said, you know what? It doesn't matter how good of a lecturer you are, if active student engagement is always better. And so spending that time of having kids actively exploring, looking at things, I think that's how we help kids be more curious and let their ideas and not all the students doing the same thing.
So,
well, and oh, go ahead, George.
Sorry. So, Alice, there's just some complaints in the chat that you don't have enough energy for this talk. So I don't know. You might have to pick it up a little bit. No, your passion is so amazing. And just, you know, one of the things I really appreciate, Alice, about you is I know that you're very serious about your work, but you have so much fun doing what you do. And I just wish that was the norm. Because sometimes it's like one or the other, and I really appreciate that. And building on that, talk about spreadsheets. I want you to talk about spreadsheets. I need you to talk about spreadsheets.
Talk or rant?
Yeah, go for it. I need you to do it.
Well, I'm going to rant first, right? Because one of the most valuable skills really is knowing how to use a spreadsheet. Every single manager that I know uses a spreadsheet. So how do we let kids graduate from high school not knowing how to do a spreadsheet? As teachers, it is essential that we know how to manipulate data quickly so we can respond to students. I collect data from students. Data is not a 4-letter word. Old data is a 4-letter word. And it is, I mean, when I start to think about some of the ways where I've gotten data and been able to help students that were struggling right now, because students are emotionally invested for about 5 seconds. And then the longer the gap between them getting feedback and then finishing a task, the less they care. And so it's such an important skill that teachers know how to make a pivot table, that they know how to organize data on a spreadsheet information and use that to really impact student learning. How is that not an essential part of every teacher credential program? I don't understand. And if I hear this one more time, that you can't use technology in math, my whole head's going to explode. So, you know, more shameless self-promotion. I have a book on teaching math with Google Apps. You
should write more books. These are all done in the last year, by the way.
Couple of years. Almost done with the Google Apps for Littles with Christine Pinto. But I hear this all the time: is you can't teach math with Google. You can't use technology in math. Like, who are these people in 2017 who do math without technology?
It's a great question.
My dad's an engineer. You think he's doing that stuff by hand? Like, give me a break. Although I think he would really love the return to the slide rule. He talks about that a lot. I don't even know what slide rule is. I'm 41 this week.
You've lost me.
But I never use a slide rule. So, you know, the calculator is the obvious tool. But spreadsheet, where do you use math, technology in math? Spreadsheets. Where do you use math in the real world? Spreadsheets. It's a giant function.
So Alice, do you teach kids how to create and use the spreadsheets to look at their own data and make sense of their own information?
So glad you said it that way, Katie, because there's so much good research around, you know, when kids track their own data, when they're responsible, when they do, as Jen Roberts, she was sharing, when we have kids do self-grading, self-reporting, students are in charge of that. When they map their own data, they learn more. They have more ownership over their learning. And so helping kids to use spreadsheets just for that, to keep track of their own progress. Spreadsheets are great because you can also gamify it and have them level up and to create challenges. I have a spreadsheet on my website where you can create a list of challenges, put how difficult they are, how much XP they're worth. And when the students mark them off, they get badges, and then it'll create a display page of that and then embed on their digital portfolios. Google Sites are awesome for that.
What Alice? Just so everyone, your site is, it's alicekeeler.com, correct?
Alicekeeler.com, and if you do /GamePD, so I initially made it for professional development as a way to differentiate instruction at a professional development event. But I thought, wait, kids can use this, and so it's all set up. You can just alicekeeler.com /GamePD is a way to give kids choice, right, Katie? Because it's super important. I actually
right, Katie. Right, Katie.
Right.
Started teaching math. You know, it's so important in teaching math. I decided that I just need to give kids choice. So I would do detention. I would assign detention to kids on my prep period. And, you know, the kids come in and they're frothing at the mouth and they're like, my teacher is evil. I'm like, that's great. Just hold on a second. Thursday detention or Saturday detention? Thursday. Okay, great. Please continue to rant about how your teacher is so evil. And they're just so taken back that they had a choice. You know,
they don't even care it's detention.
They can't even rant anymore. And then later when they come and they do want to complain, they're like, oh, I have Thursday detention. I'm like, well, you chose it. I'm like, oh yeah. And then they go. And they're like, this is awesome. So, you know, even if I just do problems 1 through 10 or 11 through 20, where I give kids any choice, it helps them to feel like they have a locus of control. And by the way, I got that from some research when I was working on a doctorate. Is this the kids having a sense of locus of control, that they don't feel like everything's being imposed on them. Even my college students still raise their hand to ask to go to the bathroom. You know, like every bit of their life is so like, do this, do it this way. If you don't have your name in the upper right hand corner and it better be in pencil, you get no points. You know? So like, do exactly like it. So trying to give kids as much choice as possible is a really great way to help them.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in, Katie. I'm gonna jump in. So I want to ask you something. Obviously, this opportunity is we wanted to actually connect with authors, connect with educators, and talk about their stuff. But we also want to connect it to the notion of the innovator's mindset and innovation. So I just want to know why do you think about innovation in education? Tell us a little bit about it, and why do you think it's crucial educators are innovators if you do it all?
She's stunned by the question.
Oh no, I lost her. I think she outran Google.
Her new hard drive couldn't handle it.
I think Alice actually outran Google, because it's amazing how much energy she has for doing this. So Katie, why don't you talk about how you use spreadsheets in your work?
I do not use spreadsheets. I need a lesson from Alice. I'm like, I feel really inept because I don't use spreadsheets.
See if I can get her back. So here, I'm gonna give you. I think she's coming back.
She's coming back.
My question was so good that she went to go do some research on it.
So George, why don't you tell us why you think innovation is important?
Oh, there she is, Alice.
Saved by Alice.
I think my 32 gigs of RAM failed me.
I think that you outworked Google. So I think that's actually what happened.
I used up all of the internet, apparently.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. I apologize if it's redundant for the people that are watching, but before I ask you the question, anyone who has questions for Alice, tweet them out to #IMMOOC. You can do it in the YouTube live chat, and you can actually connect there too. So Alice, the book, obviously this is a course around the book, The Innovator's Mindset. And I just want to know what you think about the notion of innovation in education. And do you think educators should be innovators? Like, should be, thinking differently about what they create with what they do. So I would just love your thoughts on this while we still have you.
Absolutely. Well, we teach the future, right? It's not about what we're comfortable with or things that worked for us in the past, because culture and technology and society are constantly changing. So if we're not innovators, we are failing our students. I want you to think about, how old is Google? It's 19 years old. It just had its 19th birthday. I'll be 41 on Friday. So that means over half of my life, Google did not exist. So if I was teaching like I was taught, I'm literally out of date. Like, how many times a day do you Google search or ask something? I have one of these Google Homes where you just shout out, "Okay, Google." And my 5-year-old, he's now 5, but even when he was 4, he goes over to that thing every single day and says, "Okay, Google, what's the temperature?" He is 4. He doesn't know what that means, but he has to ask. And that's a cultural norm, that we ask questions, that we look things up. My kids won't let me help them with anything. I looked it up on YouTube.
It's way more engaging than Mom, for sure.
For sure. I mean, no one likes to talk more than me, so just beat it, Mom. I got this. I just looked it up on YouTube on double speed. I'm good. But it's how we access information in 2017 is different. And so if you're not innovating, you're obsolete. You're out of date.
You made George cry.
Your voices are the best. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Oh, your voices are
You're good.
I love them so much. They're so good. Sorry, Katie. Please take over.
Anyway, I just got distracted because someone said that you lied about your age. There's no way you're 41. You're probably 32, which...
That's very nice of them.
So that's a nice way of saying almost happy birthday.
Thank you.
So innovation, absolutely. I just want to kind of close before we wrap up into participant questions. Some of the top things that I have taken away so far, basically, choice. We recognize that we like choice. And that really empowers. So I like the 5E model, and just thinking about how that leads to empowerment. When you give people opportunities to engage in content, explore, and work on things that are meaningful, it creates opportunities to empower learners in the classroom, which I think is really powerful. And that notion about innovating and always creating something that's better, not repeating your past. So awesome awesome highlights. Are we ready to go into the participant questions, George?
Yeah, so I got one from Joe Archer. And he, so distinguish between, because, at one point we're talking about how, grades are not beneficial, but then you talked about feedback. And so I want you to actually make a clear, distinction between the two and why one is useful and maybe why one isn't.
Grades are crappy feedback. And research says...
No, but I need you to be straightforward.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, I need you to tell us exactly what you're thinking. I don't need you to beat around the bush.
Okay, so research says that we accept grades as feedback, but what we would rather have is highly detailed narrative that explains specifically what we did well and specifically what we could improve on. And I hope that you are all following the researcher, Thomas Guskey out of Kentucky. He has a lot of great stuff on grading and assessment. I believe it's him. It might be Rick Romelli. I like both of them, who says there's no such thing as average. There's no average amount of time to learn something. You don't average the grades. I don't know. I can rant all day long about grades and feedback, but feedback should be actionable. It should be very specific. Grades, what the heck does that even mean? It just means, I don't even grade the top of the stack the same as the bottom.
Alice, I'm going to jump in on that too. One of the things that, so I was mentioning earlier that I saw on Twitter, you mentioned don't grade points. You stopped grading with points because it wasn't working and it wasn't helping kids understand how they need to improve. And a comment that somebody made was, kids don't do their best they wait if you don't give them a grade, and kids don't try if you you give them the B the second time that they turn it in. So what are your thoughts on grading, and how can you help people think about that differently?
My thing always come back to is lesson design. When people want to argue, the kids won't do it if it's not for points. If you have to force points on them to get them to do it, then maybe your lesson plan needs some improvement. I believe in my soul, kids would rather learn than eat. And if you're giving them high quality feedback and they know that they're going to learn, and that's a big difference, not that they're going to get a grade, that they're going to learn, I think the kids will go far and above your expectations. And so I stopped giving points a long time ago, and I didn't have a mass exodus of students doing work. We don't have the ability to grade laser sharp accurately. We don't have the ability to distinguish as human beings the difference between an 80 and an 89. Yet we put a huge amount of value between 89 and a 90. You're not that accurate. Actually, the differential, if you were to give the same paper out to a room full of teachers and they were to grade it, what would be the differential of scores? So the research I read said 30%, except math where it's 40%. So we're talking about 3-letter grades on any particular assignment. Is a margin of error of 3-letter grades. What kind of feedback is that? And so when you give kids, they want to learn, and when you make it about points and you make it the game of school, then that's exactly what they're going to do, is they're going to play the game of school. Give me my points. Let's move on to the next assignment. I like to play a game where I just ask kids, what % of your work is busy work? With so unscientific, no qualifiers whatsoever. At first, they will joke all of it. And then they'll back off and give me some number between 65% and 85%. Well, 65% of their work is not busy work. So why is it perceived as busy work? Because they do it, get their points, move on to the next thing, get their points, move on to the next thing. So when we look at John Hattie's research of what's effective for learning, mastery learning, no kidding. Hey, did you do poorly on chapter 4? That sucks. Good luck with chapter 5. No, don't work on chapter 4. Stop. No, don't work on it. We're moving on. I hope that someday you just might learn chapter 4 by osmosis somehow, because we're not going to redo that. I mean, that's clearly stupid for learning. And yet I remember when the associate superintendent said, we're going to retake the test till kids pass. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But, I'm going to show you how dumb it is. I'm going to do it. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not here to distribute points. I'm here so kids will learn. Can you believe that was like an epiphany for me about 7 years into teaching, that I'm here for kids to learn, not to distribute points?
Well,
So,
I think that's one of the misconceptions. Like, I even talked about this in the book, that my focus when I first started teaching is you will learn the way I teach, not I will like adjust to how you learn. And I think I think what you said was really fascinating. About, you know, kids would rather learn than eat. And one of the people I listen to who's outside of education, but probably every person knows, is Tony Robbins. And he says, what every human craves is progress. Like, we want to know we're getting better. And that's something that, you know, once we see progress, that's a huge drive for us. And I think that looking at the importance, and that's one of the big distinctions I make, is that, you know, here is school and here is learning, and there is often a disconnect between the two. And that the idea that, like, when I was a principal, I would work with my teacher and say, look, like, your grade book and all this other stuff, you might have numbers, but it's not scientific. It is subjective. And so I want you to actually know the kid. And yeah, we were still in the part where we're doing percentages there, but I just trust you to, like, you don't need to go through all that. Just kind of take a glance at it, but you actually know where that kid is, that your grade book is not telling you that. So I think I really love that distinction. So I have a question for you from Debbie Bourne, and she said, how do you provide choice when there's a classroom with lots of, you know, differentiated skills, lots of, you know, different needs of students? How do you look at that in that classroom?
Technology really helps provide choice a lot. If I have to be like, okay, guys, sit here while I give 3 different sets of directions, then the bell rings. So, you know, like, I taught 9th grade algebra. The only way to get into 9th grade algebra is to fail 8th grade algebra. But if there were 4 minutes before the bell, my squirrely kids were on task working. It would not occur to them to wait for me to tell them what to do. So I post all the directions, basic level stuff that they can read. I put that online. So they walk in the door and they get to work. But then when I have directions that they can read, then they also have directions that they can choose from. So again, I progressed towards that. No matter what the assignment was, I always tried to have at least 2 choices, and I really started to move to always having 3. And so they could read which choice they wanted to do, and they could work on that. And then there is no average amount of time to learn. And so if you take, what are your learning objectives? What are the things that students really, really need to know? And the answer is always a spreadsheet. So if you put it on, you know, you put these choices on a spreadsheet of what do they need to do, and they have a period of time to complete it rather than saying they have to finish it. Everyone learns everything on Tuesday, and then everyone learns this other thing on Wednesday. Why did we do that? Because it was good for learning? It's not good for learning, but we're human beings. There's only so much that we can do, and there's only so much paperwork that we can handle. But when we start to integrate technology, it allows us, you know what? It honestly is no different to me to do late work versus on-time work anymore now that I use Google Classroom. And late work used to be the bane of my existence. I mean, I would suck hours of my life doing late work, and now it doesn't matter to me at all, because Google Classroom, when a student turns in an assignment, it pushes me an email, and I click on the email, and I open Google Classroom from there, and I address it, and that's actually my workflow. As I go from the email to Google Classroom working on it. Well, if the email is late or if the email is on time, no extra effort. So that allows me to give kids more flex. Those that need more time, because I'm a human being, and technology helps me do it now.
Well, and so I think that point too, kind of going back to the point question, we have this notion that if it has to be done at a certain point in time, on a certain day, and you turn it in and you get X amount of points. And that notion, it is about average, and it leaves so many kids behind. So thinking about Debbie's question, it's almost like when you have students with so many diverse needs, how do you not provide choice? You know, back to your conversation about they're motivated and inspired because they have options. So we can engage and empower kids more by providing them opportunities to do, to think and to make choices about what they want to do, even if it's within the parameters of what you need to accomplish as a teacher. Right. So yeah, awesome. I think the one last point that I just want to make that you guys brought up, you said Tom Gutsky. I remember being in a workshop with him, and he gave the example of one assignment that one assignment asked 50 teachers to grade it, and it ranged from an F to an A based on how teachers grade it in their grade book. So we think that there's one right way, and we tell kids you have to do it my way. But if they go to another teacher, it might be a great assignment, or they might be doing well based on a teacher. And we need to have more conversations about that. Because we're putting kids at a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, so one easy thing to do is consider just switching to credit, no credit. You're going to do this until you learn it. Mastery is not an option. You're going to do it until you learn it. You don't have the ability to grade accurately or fairly. I would not grade the top of the stack the same as the bottom. So there is that, just amongst yourself, there's a margin of error, let alone if they had another teacher. So if we want to focus on the learning is what's important, not the collecting of points.
Love that. Mastery matters.
So we're going to end off tonight. And Alice, I just want to thank you for your time. People are already green screening you, which I was hoping for. So we're going to do that hashtag Alice Keeler green screen challenge. And so just
I have a good sense of humor.
Yeah, people are like, putting you on fire just for the night. So
I love it.
Katie, I want to thank you for taking the time as well. But Alice, before we go, where can we find you, and what book should we be looking at that you have out right now?
Okay, great. I'm Alice Keeler. My website is alicekeeler.com. My Twitter handle is @AliceKeeler. All of my short URLs are alicekeeler.com/GamePD or whatever. I have 4, almost 5 books. So I have 50 things you can do with Google Classroom, 50 things to go further for student-centered classrooms. Is it the same book? No, it's red. Math. And of course, Dipset Homework, which is really about how we can make better connections with kids, and we can just do our class time, use our class time more efficiently, so we don't need the homework.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice. Thanks, Katie. And tomorrow, Twitter chat, IMMOOC, Tara Martin, Anik, and Katie Martin will be hosting at 9 p.m. tomorrow Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. I hope you had a great week. Love the blogs. Keep them coming. Thanks again, Alice. Thanks, Katie. Have a wonderful evening.
George. Thanks, Katie.
Bye.
Good night. Thanks, Alice.
Bye.